Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts. With me as always is your solstitial host,
Brian. How's it going? And I hate to be this person again, but what's that mean?
I was really struggling on the fly to think of what's the adjectival form of solstice, because today is the winter solstice.
Which is specifically a very Irish tradition. It's a tradition all over the world, obviously. Ireland has a rich history with it. We have Newgrange, which is a very, very old
Neolithic burial mound,
where specifically on the solstice you can see incredible carvings being cast into shadow and all this stuff.
Yeah,
specifically.
So we know our Stonehenges and we know our pyramids and all these kind of marvels of ancient astronomical engineering and all that, and Newgrange is essentially an Irish one of those where they built and positioned in such a way that specifically on this day the light hits the burial chamber in just the right way, and people go fucking crazy for it.
Yeah, if you are someone who likes that kind of thing, who likes reading about, your bizarre Roman constructions, your incredible Aztec carvings, here's another one of them. Though, so important to bear in mind, Aztec culture, so recent, the reason we think of it as so old is because they were colonized and wiped out.
Yeah, it's like a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
Not a couple hundred, obviously, a few
600 years ago, yeah. So here's your Buffy summary.
We're a Buffy podcast.
This episode is Dirty Girls. I've referred to it as Dead Girls about 800 times. It's season 7, episode 18. It was first aired on April the 15th, 2003. It was directed by Michael Grossman, also known as Michael Gershman, who last directed him. This is his final episode. Michael Gershman died in 2018. I think I mentioned that probably in the first episode that we recorded. He was the director of photography for a lot of Buffy stuff. The first episode of anything he ever directed was Passion.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The Buffy episodes he directs tend to be absolutely wonderful. Rest in peace, Michael Gershman. And also, great job. I really, really appreciated his work here. And it was written by Drew Goddard, who last wrote Lies My Parents Told Me. And this is his final episode writing as well.
Another mainstay of our
sort of. He only entered in season 7, but
definitely in the last tranche of episodes.
Yes, yeah, he has been a standout writing element, and he writes a lot for Angel season 5. And here is your Buffy summary. Potential Shannon is rescued by Caleb from Bringers. He mocks and stabs her. Taken to hospital by Faith and Willow, returned from LA. She tells Buffy that Caleb has something of hers. Wood sacks Buffy. Faith and Spike bond flirtatiously. Buffy tracks a Bringer to a winery where super strong Caleb defeats Buffy, Spike and Faith, kills Potential's Molly and blinds Xander's left eye. God, the other Potential can get fucked, eh?
Diane.
Yeah.
Remember seriously. Her name. The juvenile part of me was also snickering at Wug's sacks Buffy, which has a very specific and perhaps very geo-specific meaning in Irish boys' schools.
Yeah, sacking in Irish boys' school is where you punch someone in the nuts.
Or more specifically, wrap them. It's the whipping motion that's particularly painful.
Yeah,
rather than the blunt force trauma. So on that note, we're going to cycle over to the end of year bonanza gala over in the Bronze.
The final one for Buffy Boys.
The final one, yeah. This is our last Buffy Boys Christmas. In this incarnation, at the very least.
Yeah, I just listened. I just brought Ludo for a walk and I listened to this section from last year, and we said, okay, we're going to keep this short because it went on too long last year, and I'm going for half an hour. So I'm not
People love those foibles, though.
Yeah, we're not making any promises, but we're going to try to keep it short this year. So the categories are best film, best TV show, best album, and best game. So I think so. With that, should we start off just with the classic best TV show? I think this is probably the thing that we have the most to say about. We watched a lot of TV this year to the exclusion of films. I've realized all the best films of the year lists that came out recently. I've watched so few of them. I did end up last year reading or watching all of the best films that had been released kind of for 2020. So I do end up catching up on all of them in January, February kind of time. Once those lists have solidified, which I find so useful. I really love the best films lists. But
it's a nice bumper end of year thing, I think, to watch all the best film stuff.
But I saw the AV Club, who I really, really look to as a great source for this kind of stuff, haven't released their best TV shows of the year list for the year, which is absolutely fine. But I did look at the Polygon one, and we had literally watched fucking everything on it. It was actually bonkers.
For TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, we watch, as you said, a lot of TV. And it's the easiest category because it's the only one for which I keep meticulous records.
It's so true.
I literally, I have it's actually quite nice. I have a really handsome Game of Thrones hardback notebook with a wolf emblazoned on for House Stark.
Which you got from work, I think.
No, it wasn't even from work. It's from someone who I work with whose husband worked in tourism, and obviously Game of Thrones is very big in the north of Ireland because it's filmed there. A lot of it was filmed in studios there. Anyway, I just have this book that I've had for years, and it's getting nicely organically tattered now, and I just keep a list of where we are in our various TV shows, and I really like it.
So let me give you my honorable mentions. Start. Okay, so my honorable mentions are Yellow Jackets, which we started watching last week. It's incredible. We watched all 6 episodes that are currently released in the space of like 4 or 5 days. It is God, we're gonna have to just talk about it another time because it's so good. Go off and watch Yellow Jackets. If you like Buffy, you'll like it, I promise. Other honorable mentions: Good Fight this year was great. Chucky. Not the other two. Infinity Train, the season that came out of Infinity Train this year was really good, but not nearly as good as the other season. So it's kind of sad that it ended on it. But
can I tell you, from trying to go back to all these lists, it's been a long year because a lot of this stuff feels like it was a very long time ago.
No, Reservation Dogs, Rutherford Falls, Babysitters Club, Never Have I Ever, Arcane, White Lotus, What We Do in the Shadows. Maybe What We Do in the Shadows should be in my proper list, maybe. And Mystic Quest were all on my
Mythic Quest
are all on my honorable mentions. Mythic Quest and What We Do in the Shadows, incredible this year. Mythic Quest, really good. 2 incredible episodes in there, but they don't quite make my list.
A lot of new entries in there as well.
100%, which I love. My actual list though had very high on it Toucan Birdie, fucking loved it. Search Party, this season 4 of Search Party was just insane and wonderful, and I fucking loved it.
The Twink season.
Yeah. How To with John Wilson. We watched all of season 1 and season 2 this year. Season 2 is currently airing. I'm loving it, but I'm kind of half counting that for both. The other 2 this year was so fucking good. It was unbelievable. It was by far the funniest show that came out this year. The Succession specials that came out this year. Sorry, the Euphoria specials came out this year. One of them came out actually late December last year, so whatever. But the one that came out this year anyway was incredible. Just tender, beautiful, wonderful. Such a fan of that show. Succession was my number 2 pick. Season 3 of Succession was so good. So good. But my number 1 TV show of the year, Pen 15. Undeadly Pen 15.
This is very interesting because nothing you've picked from your top list are the ones that I've picked. So that's good. I think that's a good contrast. Pen 15 was wonderful, yeah.
Pen 15 is maybe my top 10 shows of all time. Maybe. It is so stunningly, wonderfully beautiful. I love it so much.
And I think it overlaps so much with the demographic and disposition of people who like Buffy as well. So I think there's a lot of like commonality there.
Okay, give me your list, Joe.
So you said to keep it short. So I actually only have 2 that we haven't kind of covered all.
This was me cutting it short.
Yeah, I know, but I agree with everything you said. It said there, really a great year for television. I think I think we watched fewer films because television has gotten better.
Yeah.
But the 2 at the top, my second choice I decided to go for was Evil.
Oh fuck.
No, this is mine. And Evil, which
Evil absolutely would have like.
You can tell me when do we start watching that?
June.
For a lot of reasons, which we've discussed Evil before. It is a lot of fun. It is. I feel like no one else is really watching it that we know. So it's nice. It's been nice to be on that. It is absolutely fucking buck wild. It is horror TV, which is actually a few of the things you mentioned about horror TV. A few of the things we're watching, but it's often being a rarity, and I love it. And obviously, I associate so much with us moving into BBHQ here.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful.
And
great performances, great visuals, stupid fun, greatness. Yeah. And what was your number 1?
You're gonna kick yourself.
Yeah.
Berserk.
Okay. Berserk.
Okay.
Well, we watched that this year, certainly.
Yeah.
We're not doing it watching this year. It's.
I think we have this debate every single year. Is this stuff that came out this year or stuff that we watched this year?
So it's mostly stuff that we watched this year and didn't have a reasonable chance to have watched or listened to or whatever.
Okay. But we didn't know anything about Berserk before this year.
Okay, I would say Berserk is a great thing to shout out at this time of year. Anyway,
I'm going to take it. It was transformative art.
Oh yeah.
I personally, one of the reasons why I loved it was because it really caught your attention, and I really was able to like ride that wave, which I really enjoyed. It's foundational to so many things that we love. Your Dark Souls, that kind of gothic like effective cosmic horror. It is a complete piece of work in terms of the anime, which we're talking about, and while it's unfinished narratively, it is a closed and watchable experience, and it was just, I felt lost in it. And yeah, so it was really, really, really wonderful. So while it didn't come out this year, we definitely knew nothing about it at the start of the year, and then became Berserk Spurks.
So. Yeah, for sure. So for film wise, I have so few this year, it's embarrassing. Like the kind of honorable mentions here would be Mitchell's versus Machines. Loved it. So beautiful, so wonderful. And Bo Burnham's Inside, which I absolutely loved, and is not getting my best albums of the year because Spotify already said that to me, and I hated
got
it.
really offended by that.
I did. My genuine like best films of the year, probably Judas and the Black Messiah. Really love that movie. Thought it was wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Then Titan was probably my number 2. Thought it was incredible. Just like insane, scary. I'm going to be buying on Blu-ray. And my number 1 is Minari, which I think came out late 2020 on a limited release and all this stuff. And it's just one of those situations where it's like I could not have watched this earlier than I did.
Yeah.
Which was in 2021. Like unbelievable, incredible, beautiful, tender, sad movie, and warming and just wonderful. Loved it. Joe, what were your films of the year?
So my number 1 was Minari, because I think it probably was the best film I watched this year.
Undoubtedly.
Then up there for my personal favorite, the one that jumped out was the Mitchells versus the Machines. It's from the same studio that Into the Spider-Verse, which was genuinely a transformative experience for me. And I use that word. I try to use it sparingly, but I use it a lot at this time of year. And it was everything I wanted from, like, it made me feel childlike watching it. And it's a main queer character that was called out from the start, and it was both was and wasn't part of their story. It is, I wish I could give it to a younger version of me. So
I would die if I could watch any of the content that the kids get these days. I know. Like, I mean, just hand me that single frame from Korra when I was 12, and I would have, like, my heart would have been fixed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the one I had that you didn't have, because I thought it was a fantastic cinema experience, was The Suicide Squad.
Oh, you know what? The Suicide Squad makes it on my list too.
Yeah, because I thought not only was it genuinely good fun, a great cinema film, a kind of a breath of fresh air in terms of superhero films in many ways, but I do find that relationship between doing the same film twice, which is Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad, and how one worked and one didn't, I found that really engaging thing, trying to figure out why that was.
No, it was fascinating.
And between that and the Harley Quinn TV animated show, kind of brought me around to Harley a little bit more, so I was really on board with that.
Other thing to mention there, actually, we watched Venom: There Will Be Carnage over the weekend with our friend
Let
Keen.
There Be Carnage.
Let There Be Carnage. There will be carnage. There will be blood. Like, Jesus Christ. Was really stupid, really gay, really watchable. If you have people over, you want to take something on where you drop in every so often to hear one bonkers line of dialogue and laugh about it for half an hour. Put on Let There Be Carnage. It is, I mean, again, I might put on Blu-ray.
We actually watched back to back Venom: Let There Be Carnage and before that Spider-Man 3 from the Tobey Maguire era. And between the two of them, I will say there is I think we need more superhero films which are just dumb fun. I think it's something that's really been lost in a little bit. Yeah. Okay,
so best albums of the year. I'm going to fly through my list because it's a bit intense. I will say that my honorable mentions are things like Illuminati Hotties. Let Me Do One More. Thought it was great and really fun. Olivia Rodrigo Sour is probably on the honorable mentions list, but it's very close to being very high up there because I thought it was wonderful. Floating Points, Pharaoh Sanders and London Philharmonic, their album Promises. Just really wonderful, jazzy, electronic-y, orchestral beautifulness. Liz Phair is Soberish, like, great return to form for Liz Phair, loved it. And then my actual list is probably stuff like Hey What by Low. Low are seminal slowcore mainstays of the genre. We went to see them in 2010. It was wonderful.
2010. Oh my god.
No, we went to see them.
2011?
Must have been 2011 or 12.
Yeah.
Ugh, okay. Anyway, just a stunning band. Their last two albums have been just incredible. And yeah, they're not my favorite albums of theirs. Snail Mail Valentine, loved that album so much. It was like exactly what my ears needed at every moment, which was 90s guitar fronted, like nasally, angsty woman rock music. I genuinely am of the opinion that rock music should only be made by queer people and women at this point. Like, I mean, obviously women in that situation, I'm trying to cover, like, you know, if you're a woman or if you're a queer person or both, make rock music. Otherwise don't. We already heard it. You're boring. And then the Weather Station, Ignorance was a really stunning, very chill, very cool album this year. I really liked it. Dry Cleaning, New Long Leg, love it so much. It is kind of like Gang of Four, kind of like Life Without Buildings, if you're into that kind of stuff, which I am. And then I think then Path of Wellness by Sleater-Kinney, thought it was incredible. My number, and Billie Eilish, Happier Than Ever, stunning album. Billie Eilish is just such a fucking talent. It's unbelievable. I think she deserves every ounce of praise she gets. She is like redefining pop music. And then my favorite album of the year is actually one that came out last year, but Robert Christgau is my favorite music critic by far. Has recommended this album just like this year, and I would never have gotten onto my radar otherwise. But it's The Front Bottoms, In Sickness and in Flames. Absolutely adore that album. Huge recommendation, and it was my album of the year, even if it wasn't the album that came out this year. Joel, what's on your list?
So this is never going to be my strongest category. So I have not listened to a lot of new music this year, but I will say that the most recent album I got into, which I like, was Snail Mail Valentine as well. So I've been listening to that consistently, and particularly the music video for Valentine is hypnotic.
Horror brilliance.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Actually, maybe it's one of it might have really maybe it clicked for me, like why people like music videos in addition to the songs. Do you know what I mean? Otherwise, I may have had this last year, but I have to say again, Morbid Stuff by Pup.
Is that a last year? It came out in 2019.
Yeah, it was the entirety of my Spotify Wrapped, I think, was that album this year, because it just became, I really like it, but it became the background to me working. If I couldn't think of anything else to put on, I would put on that album.
Let me tell you, Joel, that album, impossible to find on vinyl. I've been trying for fucking years to find it for you.
For at least, at most, 2 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that really got me through just a lot of, like, you know, busy, difficult times in work, all that kind of stuff. And then...
when you were bored as fuck.
Yes, exactly. And then a really obvious one, a really saccharine one, but I'm going to maybe say In Waiting by Pillow Queens.
Oh, that was last year as well, but
I properly got to listen to it this year on repeat. Obviously we got to go see the gig this year. Hometown Heroes, and you want to talk about women and or queer people making rock music, redefining the genre, making stuff that's actually worth listening to, making Irish stuff that makes you feel happy to be Irish. There you go. Pillow Queens. Yeah.
Okay. Best games of the year. This is a weird one. Again, I didn't play a huge amount of games this year, but ones that stood out to me: Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart. Really beautiful game. Wonderful wonderful looking, wonderful to play. I have Resident Evil 8 on my list. I didn't play it, but Joel and I played it together. Joel very much actively, you didn't play it unless I was sitting beside you.
Yeah, we
were chatting about it the whole time. We played it in the same way that you had Last of Us Part 2 on your list last year. I think it's fair enough to have this. Death's Door is one that I haven't played a huge amount of. I probably played like 8 hours or so. I think I'm about halfway through. Beautiful. It only came out for the Switch recently. Inscription I haven't played a huge amount of, maybe 5 or 6 hours. It's a long, weird, bonkers game, but I'm very much enjoying and finding it very scary. My proper list, things like Bowser's Fury get up there, which was any Mario will always do it for me. And this is new Mario, which is like unusual, and it was open world. And what I'd say for that game in terms of why I liked it is that, like, I played every second of that game. I 100%ed it over a space of a weekend, had a wonderful time. And then I think my game of the year is probably going to be Metroid Dread.
Oh, very interesting.
Which I have been playing. I've been mainlining the last week or so, but I'd played a good bit of previously. It is, if only there's some words to describe the kind of game genre this is, but it's just wonderful. It's classic, brilliant, visually great, love it. And yeah, Deathloop I would love to have on my list, but I didn't play enough of it.
Yeah, a lot of great stuff there. As often happens, a lot of stuff which I didn't play necessarily. I think we're kind of different. We go in different vectors with that. Deathloop is a whole lot of fun, and I think the critical consensus on it has settled to like, don't expect it to be like the game that defines a generation, but just enjoy it while you're playing it. Yeah, but a lot of great stuff there. So I probably played through a lot of games this year. I also played a lot of Destiny 2, which I can't give any accolades to. It's just my hobby and my second job is what I do, but it was also a lot of fun, and I have been enjoying it. The two which I wanted to put up at the top of the list were Resident Evil 8, which you mentioned, because I think it is a tremendous distillation of why people play Resident Evil games. If you want to get a Synecdoche Resident Evil, it's Resident Evil 8. It has both the modern generation like technical power behind it. It has the quality of life of Resident Evil 7, some of the real horror elements.
That's the moment-to-moment fun gameplay.
Moment-to-moment fun, the wild characters.
I'll say something else, Joe. I think it's a synecdoche of why people play video games.
Yeah, it's a good point. It doesn't have any fat on it. It has a little bit of puzzle solving, a little bit of upgrading, a little bit of exploration,
boss battles,
lore, all that kind of stuff, but never more than is necessary. And it is a digestible, like 8-10 hour experience, something like that.
Probably 12, 13.
But with some replayability to it as well.
Yeah.
But just a lot of fun to play. And then my top was Disco Elysium, which I mentioned recently.
Of course, yeah.
Which was
it came out last year, or maybe the year before, but only came out this year for consoles. So
yes, I think it came out originally in 2019, and then I think maybe late last year, maybe mid last year, it came out with a remastered, not remastered, but like a legendary edition that had voice acting, that had extra storylines, all that kind of stuff. Basically, the version that they wanted to put out, and I've talked about before, but it's both a throwback to a generation of computer role-playing games which developed such a fervent community around them like 20 years ago, but also maybe one of the best narrative experiences I've ever played. Like the writing, like usually games have a solid main story and then you can't expect everything to be great. Like the volume of writing in this, and the volume of exceptional voice acting, and the melancholia of the whole thing, it is one of the most confident voices I've seen, like from start to finish in a game. And it's a distinct, memorable experience that I just completely submerged in, and then came out the other side. I was like, oh fuck, I have to come up for air a little bit. Yeah.
Two final notes there. One is Repentance. Binding of Isaac Repentance, actually, definitely in my top 3 games of the year. It's a DLC for a game. I'm fine with that. It was transformative of the Binding of Isaac, the best roguelite of all time. If we're being like realistic, I mean, I probably think that like stuff like I actually think Enter the Gungeon. I think Enter the Gungeon is a better main game. I think Hades is better in lots of ways. I think Spelunky is better in a lot of ways, but ultimately I think Binding of Isaac Repentance was just transformative for one of the most important games ever for that genre. And it's the last thing I'd say is over the last 2 nights we've been playing the other two. It Takes Two, which is a couch co-op or online co-op game where you and a friend play through lots of platforming. I've been loving it. It's been so well communicated. You know what it reminds me most of?
What's that?
Portal 2. Remember that lovely time when we played Portal 2 together, and it was like one of the final couch co-op genuine like mission, genuine like side like games for a game where you actually got to do distinct missions and figure out puzzles together. Yeah,
and just be absolutely clear, like by couch co-op, like what we mean there is actually being able to sit beside someone you're playing with and play through a 2-player game, which is just a dying genre, really.
Which is nuts, because I would buy literally all of them. Yeah. I want to play video games with you. Anyway, okay, been a while for you for content, Joe. So thank you very much for watching through all that with me, listening through with me, all that stuff. Final note, one final proper note. What was your favorite book you read this year?
Yeah, so actually
Not the book that came out this year, book you read this year.
Maybe a couple of honorable mentions, because I might mention
sure.
comic as well, if that's okay. Yeah, so just a couple of honorable mentions from genres that we maybe don't go as deep into usually, but are genres or mediums. Media. So my favorite book I read this year, I obviously read a lot of staples in terms of your Doctor Who's, your Star Treks, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's going to be Gideon the Ninth, which I mentioned before. Gothic lesbian space opera, romance revenge story. Just again, kind of a complete bonkers narrative. Fully, it was like picking up a fantasy novel that you knew nothing about as a kid and kind of getting lost in that world again.
Yep.
Brought me back there. So valuable in these times, I think, to have that kind of experience. And yet again, it's just better when it's queer, and it's better when it's women and otherwise, I've obviously read a lot of comics this year. I probably have more to talk about that in future, because I'm really going through a comic period at the moment. Obviously read all the Angel comics, all the Buffy comics, etc. I've talked about them before. I will say that I would recommend again the 2019 Boom Studios relaunch of the Buffy comics, because if it's a jumping on point for people who either don't read comics and may already know Buffy and that's kind of a soft slide, or if you want to maybe introduce Buffy to other people in a way that, kind of other than the TV show, it's actually quite a good way to get on board. And then I'll just mention something interesting which I'm reading at the moment, which is The Spire, which actually came in 2015, which is not recent, but it's Eisner Award winning, and it's only 8 issues, so it's a limited series, but it's basically, there's a spire in the desert, everyone lives on the spire, it's 51 stories tall, it's full of both humans, half humans, mutants, all that kind of stuff, and someone has found a body. And so it's that kind of, you have your detective who is kind of a half mutant outcast, but is also the police detective, and that kind of found a body in a weird scenario is such a great way to explore the scenario through the case. And it's also queer as well. It's kind of beautifully drawn. It has kind of a like a French 1970s look to it as well. I'm just really been enjoying it. So again, rather than getting something deep, if you want to try something that is good and weird and acclaimed and short, The Spire. Excellent.
Okay. My very quick note about the favorite book I read this year, undoubtedly Beloved by Toni Morrison. One of my favorite books of all time now. Stunning. If you are looking for a push to go out and read a book, please read it. Beloved by Toni Morrison. Do not read the crap that Jill recommended. Okay. Let's move on to Buffy.
Yeah, so talking about crap that I like, here we are watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and as we said, it is Dirty Girls. And yeah, so this episode, obviously, as people are probably well aware, kind of a bit of a gear shift in terms of this season. So we have this last tranche is accelerating towards the finale. We have the town is being deserted, or half deserted. People aren't coming to school anymore. People are starting to, evacuate. They know, parts of the town, it seems, are actually fully under control of vampires, it seems, or bringers. We have the introduction of Caleb, played by Whedon-verse mainstay Nathan Fillion, who is a physical embodiment of the threat of the First and a hand essentially for the First, and then we have the escalation in terms of the attack on the Vineyard and the permanent consequences of that. So yeah, Brian, revisiting this episode, what do you think? My first thought is, why didn't you introduce Caleb earlier? Caleb is a strong character, and it could have been fleshed out. He could have been a genuine threat throughout the season. Instead, they realized towards the end of the season, they're like, fuck, we haven't really done anything. The First hasn't been threatening. It has been scary as a general concept, but there is nothing that we can get to quip for the First, and we need something. And they brought Caleb in too late for the season. That being said, this works. This episode is well written, it is tight, and it's good. I thought the episode overall was very good. I agree with you, and I think you can see maybe some of the compressedness of that in the fact that you would not, if you were plotting this season from start, you would not introduce Caleb and Faith in the same episode. Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't even mention Faith there, but obviously Faith, there's a massively extended previously on Buffy sequence where they also build on the fact that Willow went to Angel, the TV series, and brought Faith back from season 4 of Angel. And it's a lot, it's good in many ways because there's no time for fluff, because there's actually a lot happens in the one episode. Yeah, and I like that. The moment-to-moment interactions are good. The writing is terse. So, speaking of Caleb, I would say that Caleb has come into this narrative at this point to remind us of what the central
premise is of Buffy. As we know, Buffy has been, as a TV show, was conceived from this concept that Joss Whedon has of seeing these girls in an alley in a horror movie, and what happens is they get killed as fodder for the narrative, as an escalation of threat, because they're disposable. And I think what's notable often in those horror movies is that they are disposable because they are sexual. They're either sexual as they're perceived, as Caleb does to Shannon at the beginning of this episode. Is it Shannon?
Shannon, yeah.
Or they are sexual because they have actually engaged in sexual acts. Either way, they have become dirty. In this kind of like puritanical perception. It's so fascinating how much of American culture has been influenced by Puritanism, which, you know, it's funny because it's a thing that a lot of cultures flirt with. America has really embedded it into their learned experience of their country because they had so little to build on culturally for so many years up until like the 19th century. They didn't really have something to structure. That Puritanism is and that issue of Buffy walking into the alley and becoming the person who's fighting against this. I think we get reintroduced to that same problem again to say to Buffy, your response has not worked. Your response, which is that I am the chosen one, I'm going to save everyone I can, it is no longer working. We need a more systematic approach. And to say that to Buffy, we bring in like the most misogynistic character who has ever appeared in Buffy, including the trio. I would say the trio are misogynist to their very core, but they are a misogyny which is unsharpened. It is blunt and stupid.
Yeah.
Caleb, it's very much a systemic and a noted and a hatred of women.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that they, you know, as we've discussed before, there's a relatively light flirtation with actual organized religion, or specifically Christianity, or specifically Catholicism. You know, with vampirism, usually that's a very, or the occult, that's a very quick go-to. But through the show, generally light touches here and there. I think the fact that they choose to make him a defrocked priest specifically is to layer that patriarchy, that misogyny, really make him incredibly dense with all the signifiers of him being a strong, confident, cis straight white man. He is representing this patriarchal, like historically patriarchal, historically misogynistic organization. He's representing all of those the antiquated and retrograde parts of that kind of middle America values, and specifically all this imagery of driving a truck, which is kind of very kind of bread basket, kind of picking up a girl by the side of the road, lecturing her, etc. And
it's terrifying that that like pickup truck has become an image both of like comfort for a lot of people in the sense that it's like, you know, it's what they knew growing up, but it's also like it's ubiquitous, so it's also incredibly threatening because, like, you know, threat is so ubiquitous in America as a nation. Yeah,
because I think what he brings with him is a lot of signifiers of kind of true down-to-earth horror, which the show, in keeping its tone roughly about kind of 15, 16, kind of doesn't often really flirt with. But like that
this
image,
is the furthest you go with it, really.
Yeah, like the image of Shannon being in the car with him and there being no handles on the inside, like that's not fantasy horror. No. That's just horror. Yeah.
You know what actually really reminded me of is Zodiac. You know, the scene in Zodiac where someone who, like, by all accounts probably is, well, who knows, like the Zodiac killer probably didn't exist, right? That's what we've kind of come to as a cultural understanding of the Zodiac killer.
The last I checked in on that, I think it was a combination of several ultimately unrelated attacks and also a media kind of conglomeration of it to a large degree,
and a lot of police needing it to be this and all that stuff. So there's a scene in Zodiac, which I think is probably my favorite serial killer movie after Silence of the Lambs, by David Fincher, this one 2007, where there's a girl being picked up on the side of the road because her car is broken down and she has a baby, and it's terrifying. I remember having nearly a panic attack in the cinema because he says, like, I'm going to make you throw your baby out the window, and whatever.
Intense. And this is that same kind of intensity, that kind of quiet situation where, I think what he carries is the sense of how this misogyny and this violence exists under civility. So civility is not the antithesis to violence. Yeah.
What I'd say though at the same time is that I think Nathan Fillion is slightly miscast here because it's his natural warmth and natural charisma that shines through this. You don't get the conviction always with Caleb, I think.
Yeah, I think they try to suggest that, you know, obviously he has killed women before and that it was because he had this charm that they followed. And if that is the case, by casting Nathan Fillion, like, again, you might want to show him earlier in his development. Maybe you show him earlier in the season where you have even an episode or two where it seems like even though he is already evil, maybe he is helpful to someone, or you know, you develop his relationship with a girl over the course of a couple of episodes, and then he betrays her.
That'd be great. Imagine if they had been building up this whole season, like, you know, small, like in the same way they were kind of showing the potentials being killed around the world. Imagine if they had been like threading through this season, Caleb, like a backstory for Caleb where he was developing a relationship with someone and we're like, how does this connect to Buffy? And ultimately he kills her and like in a really horrific way and like comes to understand these kind of like dirty girls as a concept, and then walks into the narrative here. Like, what if this was a reveal? It's like, oh my god, that's who Caleb is. Yeah,
exactly. But by bringing him in already pure hateful, I agree that Nathan Fillion's warmth just kind of undercut that a little bit. It's actually on a bizarre.
He's also a dreamboat. He's also a dreamboat.
He is. Yeah. No. On a kind of tangential note, I have read all the Firefly comics recently, and there was one line that took out from how they described Mal or Nathan Fillion, which is, it is the softest a hard face has ever looked. You know, because he has a certain amount of chiseledness to him, a certain ruggedness, but he's also like a lot of like babiness to him. Yeah, so he's a very boyish, rugged man.
I do think I'm the only person in the world who knows Nathan Fillion primarily from Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place.
Yes, I've never seen an episode of that show.
Yeah, it's great. Ryan Reynolds also. Okay, so I think what I'd say there is I also have a quote from to read out from by Rhonda Wilcox from Why Buffy Matters. So I'll just jump into that just on this Puritanism and stuff. For the first evil, this means that Buffy is one of the dirty girls. For the Buffy myth, this means that the dirty girl will rule the world. Caleb, the vessel of the first evil, expresses traditional patriarchal religious scorn of women. As Mary Wollstonecraft reminded us long ago, whether or not women had souls had been a matter of some debate. And in season 7, the first evil chooses to take the form of a potential slayer named Eve, clearly recalling the Judeo-Christian traditional casting of woman in the role of the first sinner and sexual temptress. The potential Eve is a short blonde woman, but the first evil also spends much of season 7 in the form of another short blonde woman, Buffy herself. I noted in Fighting the Forces, which is another book, that Glory was a product version of the overdressed blonde bimbo some have considered Buffy. The first evil's presentation as Eve and as Buffy continues this visual pattern is thus one element of the text that suggests that Buffy must fight herself, must fight that inner voice that calls herself a dirty girl and may reject power. The climax of the battle for Buffy comes when she tells the whining Buffy-shaped first in one of the best Buffy puns, "Get out of my face." Slayers or potential slayers who can choose to handle the demon within are capable of becoming leaders, are capable of wielding power. So obviously that, like, you know, suggests that like there's some... I think that like this really does fall on the right side here, where we are not giving into this suggestion that like what women are trying to fight is themselves, they're trying to fight the dark nature inside them. What we're trying to fight here is women being told that they are inappropriate as people, that they are dirty, that they're not good for being women, you know. And I think what Buffy ultimately does here is she empowers other women through giving her own power to them, which I think it's the core of the thing. And I'm like, I think there's messiness to the whole thing, but I think it you know, I think there's a very positive goodness in there, very close to the surface, which is great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, as you say, Buffy has both textually and kind of subtextually been set aside for so long as she is the single chosen one. That's obviously a central part of the narrative, but she's also been set aside in other ways. Like Buffy isn't allowed to be the kind of character that other women on the show can be. That, you know, she also at times, and I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is like a deliberate thing on her part, but as you say, she can be a little church lady, she can be a little proper, and a little, you know, there has been a certain amount from Buffy that like her issue with Faith isn't just Faith's violence, it's her
how she represents.
That's an unfortunate frog in my throat there, but her promiscuity and her wild partying and all that kind of stuff. And I think while Caleb presents it as a negative, basically saying, all you women are the same, and are all, there's no real differences between that. Buffy in time comes to make that into a positive, because there's certain elements of Caleb's perspective heavily skewed, but in which he is perceiving something accurate, which is there's all this over here where he is, and then ultimately there's all of them over there. And no matter how they come to the Ravello Drive, it's all they're all fighting ultimately the same thing. That's why the first evil is like an interesting concept as opposed to a bland ancient evil, because with the first evil, in terms of how it expresses itself in the show, isn't just it's the most mightiest demon, which actually it's that it is that this kind of evil and this thing they're fighting is in everything. It all comes back to the same source. And what I think kind of it connects that very nicely is, even though we have this Judeo-Christian imagery, Caleb up front says he doesn't believe in God and that Satan was the little man, that these concepts are far too anthropomorphized to be useful. What the first represents is the capacity for the way society treats women to curdle and oppress in so many tiny little ways. But the solution is always the same. The solution is always this coming together, this empowerment, this steady step forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a weird one. We'll talk more about Caleb as it goes on. He's an interesting threat for sure. The second thing I want to talk about is just the return of Faith. Imagine being in the year 2003. You have not seen Faith since season 4 of Buffy, very likely. If you saw her in season 1 of Angel, you're maybe lucky, which was slightly more recently, but it's been 3 years since Eliza Dushku has played Faith, which is bonkers, because in my mind, Faith is like this mainstay of the Buffy canon. I was talking to you last night. I think Faith might be my second favorite character in the Buffyverse, just writ large, which is pretty impressive. I would have always said Willow was a clear option there, but I don't think so this time around. But yeah, imagine in 2003, Faith arrives back. You would just be ecstatic. It would just be so exciting and fun and wonderful. I think
the idea of Faith, I think if you watch any DC universe spin-off superhero show today that has 12 seasons or whatever, of course they have people coming back and different versions of people and all that kind of stuff. Buffy's always been quite judicious in not just adding in the potential aside, but random Slayers or random other bits of Slayer lore and flashbacks to other Slayers, except where needed, So the Faith has always been a very interesting, very relevant character. I think she's really essential to what Buffy is about. I think a conclusion to the Buffy story in season 7 without Faith would have been incomplete. Absolutely, and it could have been done. And I think I like that this allows both the characters to mature, both Buffy and Faith, but show that I like the stratification of them being veteran Slayers, and the potentials having obviously all this potential and all this value, but it shows that both between what we said on Angel and Faith's recent arc, Faith is a very good Slayer. Yeah, she doesn't always have the same skills that Buffy does, but this is also her job. She has as much ownership of this as Buffy does in many ways. Yeah, I think it's fascinating as well. I remember watching. I wouldn't have watched Angel at the time when I watched all this. So when Faith came back here, I was like, oh, wonderful. And when she's going on about how she's changed and all this stuff, I remember thinking, yeah, but have you, Faith? Have you? Yeah. This time around, I'm like, no, of course she has. We've seen the work she's done on Angel specifically, and I think that's actually so nice to see that fleshed out, but really actively via Angel, specifically in the season 1 Angel episodes. But on this, it's just it was absolutely it's wonderful to see Faith back. I love her, and I think that Eliza Dushku, beautiful and so talented. Yeah, she's great. We're literally in our own time. We're gonna watch Dollhouse at some point soon. I'm probably gonna watch True Calling by myself. I just want to see more. I might watch True Calling with you. That could be a fun time. Yeah. What I want to know is why haven't all of Sarah Michelle Gellar, Eliza Dushku, and Amber Benson, Christine Sutherland, Emma Caulfield. Well, Emma Caulfield's been doing well. Why haven't all these people been in tons of TV shows since? Where are the TV shows for all these people? Chris Carpenter. Where has Chris Carpenter's starring TV show been? Chris Carpenter leading some kind of modern horror procedure or something, yeah, or an action show. Imagine if she was your action hero. Incredible.
Where are these TV shows? Hollywood, make them for me. I will pay you money.
I'm convinced.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
So yeah, I think what Faith adds here is it's a great thing into mix to take some of the pressure off Buffy being kind of the focus of particularly as Buffy's going to start being distant. You have this other element in there as well, and Faith obviously has a different relationship and a different interaction with Spike, and particularly they're seeing in the basement. And I actually thought they had tremendous charisma together.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it really, really worked. I think you said to me that there was
this was planned to be another potential spin-off.
Exactly, and whether or not how successful that would have been, but I thought that pairing really works, and they actually have a lot to talk about as characters. They have a lot to
they have very similar journeys.
Yeah, so I did enjoy that, and
I think it's apparently it didn't happen because Faith spin-offs were like heavily like desired from the studio. It didn't happen apparently because Eliza Dushku was just finished with the character, which I really respect. I have to presume some of that was not wanting to work with Joss Whedon anymore. Yeah,
when we look back now and we look at people who don't want to get locked into new things, it's like there's probably a reason why you want to move on.
Yeah,
it does fill in the gaps.
It does. I mean, there were clear production issues throughout this. The women on set were not being treated well.
Yeah.
So there seemed to be extreme bullying cultures throughout these productions. So yeah, it's no surprise that they were like, oh, can we just do some spin-offs? And the actors were like, no, thank you.
I'm going to do something else. No, absolutely. And I think I love the Dawn knock-on effect as well. That Dawn has to be angry at Faith, even though we know you weren't here.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers you being here, but you weren't here. Yeah.
I was listening to an episode of You're Wrong Babe during the week, and someone was talking about like retconning things, and they're like, Buffy did it. It's like, excuse me. Buffy did not retcon Dawn into existence.
Buffy, when you like, it's such a unique situation, but like the whole point is Dawn came into existence and then retroactively was there, but that's not retroactive continuity. That's story. Yeah.
It's story. It's bonkers story, and it's good. Anyway, the Faith and Spike spin-off would have been wonderful. Their interaction is genuine and good, and I also think it's like the secondary story to the Buffyverse. The primary story is aging and becoming mature and finding a way to enable yourself to be powerful and the people around you. And it's a very important story about maturity and fear and womanhood specifically. I think the secondary story of the Buffyverse is redemption. And you obviously see that much more in Angel. Well, it kind of takes a backseat as a plot point until they're like, oh, we have to have an emotional point here, so we'll...
So it's a little farcical in Angel. It becomes like, exactly. It's banding about a bit too much, whereas in Buffy, it's like redemption is a very hard thing to...
Yeah, redemption is a genuine point of communication and interest in Buffy, and I think that's great. So, like even at the core, you have like so many... Every character needs redemption except for Buffy, all the primary cast, so Angel, Oz, Willow, Xander should redeem, but he doesn't. Spike,
just naming characters.
Every character, Giles,
Giles,
every primary character seeks redemption, and
this is Giles's redemption, really, in many ways, based on his backstory. Like the reason why he's a Watcher is because he
fucked up.
He killed his friend when he was younger. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to talking about the Xander stuff in this episode. I think this is Xander's speech before when he says, like, Buffy cares about all of you and she knows what she's about and all this stuff. It's one of his best moments. Mm-hmm. It is one of his tenderest moments. It's one, I think he is a character who hasn't been there for his friends when they needed him. And I think this is a moment of, he could have easily done the Xander. He could have pulled a Xander. Yeah. And instead he doesn't. And for that, he gets his eyes poked out.
I also think it's written to remind us that we can care for him. So it matters. So you're not cheering when he gets his eye poked
Apparently, according to the DVD commentary, they did briefly plan to have Xander killed in this episode. And they decided not to because they didn't have enough time to to handle the emotional fallout in the final episodes of like one of her best friends dying. Which, I agree with. It would have been an interesting moment. I think they should have killed someone some point in this season.
I think something that has been watered down in later seasons of Buffy, I think, is the physical vulnerability of the mortal cast members. and we see that to a much more ludicrous degree on Angel, where I think there was a scene where Wesley cut a demon in half with an axe. It's like, he is just an Englishman. He cannot do that. But even in this, I think if I was writing this now, I would put more of a toll on Xander specifically over time, and then you would have more of a reason for him to be embittered. I think if you have his character, like, yes, he is the unpowered one, and he has consistently broken bones and been traumatized in this different way.
What if he lost his eye in season 4?
Yeah. But I do think, okay, if we want to have a look at the Xander stuff in terms of how it expresses itself in the attack on the Vineyard is like an important moment in this narrative.
I think so too.
It is a rebalancing of power, of threat. And I do think that very, very cog shot, but it's a scary moment where Caleb is like, okay, you're the Slayer, you're the ultimate expression of what I'm fighting against, and he just knocks her flat. What else have you got? That is scary. And having you realize they really are sent to be slaughtered there. This is one of the few moments of real menace and threat in the show, is when he grabs Xander. You can actually see Xander shaking when he's holding him.
Nicholas Brendan, in that moment when he screams at, he's clearly afraid, and he screams as Caleb's putting his thumb through his eye, genuine blood-curdling scream.
Yeah, and I remember at the time thinking this was like stomach-churning to watch, and I'm glad / potentially desensitized enough that I was like, yeah, I don't want to see this man's eye be put out, but this is Sam Raimi kind of stuff. It's
not even Sam Raimi, like, it's all suggestive.
No, you definitely see a thumb and some blood. Yeah, so for network television, that's fairly violent.
You're right, okay. It's an interesting moment. It's such an
oddly close location to a new location that's really close for shooting angles to do it in the Vineyard, and for him to have to move around
but it was all the choreography of the fight sequence and the photography of the fight sequence, all really well done. I really appreciated it. And my only note about all that is that I don't like how heavily they leaned on the Xander sees things storyline throughout the season. I thought it was real dull. Because I actually think he's super blind.
Yeah, it's pretty it's a little obvious.
Yeah. And when he goes up, when he Roddy's doing, he's like, they say you see things. It's like, they don't.
Who says that to you? Where have you gone?
Dawn's at it. Okay.
Caleb reads Dawn's blog.
Her diaries, the Dawn. What was it called? The Dawn diaries. They were there. The Dawn Chronicles. I can't remember what Xander called them in season 5. Anyway, okay. But yeah, and the other moment obviously there being when he kills the two potentials. So he kills Molly and Diane. Genuinely horrific. This now means that Kennedy's the only one of the 3 potentials that get brought to Buffy by Giles earlier in the season. Really sad.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't think they linger on it enough, but like there's such a sadness here to just like, these girls are like just getting slaughtered.
Yeah, I think it's such a fine line in a show which is trying to talk about the fact that women get killed in these narratives in this way, and showing it and having it is relevant, but you also don't want it to be gratuitous of like, let's really ratchet up to that. It's just pay our thighs of 1 or 2 bad Cockney accent potentials, and I don't think they do that. Maybe you would smooth the edges a little bit if you were to film it now, but I do think it's like, no, this is treated as appropriately devastating. But like, it's also, if we got to the end of this season and people didn't die, it would be robbed of some realism, I think, or some weight.
I think so too. But no, it's a genuinely chilling moment. We need to wrap this up shortly enough. And then I would just say, like, do we want to talk about Buffy as a tactician in this moment? It's kind of discussed by the episode, and there's an emphasis here on Buffy as the commander. I do respect her response here, which is that, like, I'm not waiting for someone to continually threaten me. I'm going on the attack. It's a reasonable response. I don't think it's purely in reaction to Wood and Giles. I think that I really wish that they had included more Robin Wood in the season, because I would love to be able to say either just like Robin or Wood, but I feel like he never really quite gets a proper character. Anyway, but ultimately I don't have any real interest in saying Buffy did wrong here as a tactician or not. I don't think it's super interesting. What do you think?
I think that people, even including Giles, people always have opinions on what she should be doing, and I never feel like there's any great evidence for why their plan is better than hers. Because there's absolutely, like, if anything, one of the mainstays of Buffy's successful moments has been suddenly turning up and attacking people when they weren't expecting it. Just to take an example. So I do think that how they treat her, particularly after her experiences in season 6, negates the fact that she is a person in there making decisions and trying moment to moment to make the best choice. So I don't think I think she has, you know, objectively gone a bit too harsh and a bit too people will die, people have to sacrifice, that's rushing, etc. But I can't blame her for it. No. I think she makes the best choices that she can under the circumstances, and I think equally she could have stayed at the house, and if she hadn't gone to the Vineyard, he would have just have come attack them there. So
I think so too. And then one last note that Mark Field notes is that he swaps up. He says, like, you know, and the body and blood of Jesus Christ is turned into wine. Really fascinating inversion, because obviously the wine in Christian imagery is turned into Christ's blood and body
through transubstantiation.
Exactly. So this inversion, I think, communicates this like hedonism. It communicates this
also heathenism as well.
Heathenism, absolutely. I got a sense that maybe that was just like a miswritten line, but if it wasn't, it was very, very subtle and good.
It's also the fact that, you know, Caleb echoes the sounds of Catholicism, but like he's
not saying any of
has no understanding of how it relates, because like I think even particularly as harsh detractors of it, we can say that there's at times at least a consistent like theme to it and consistent messages and all that kind of stuff, and he really just is very parroted. Yes, there's a reason why he got kicked out, I suppose. Yeah. Okay.
Let's move on to the Buffy bits. The dusting is the thing that we call this. So some Buffy bits there for you, Joel. We can presume that this episode title, Dirty Girls, is a echo of season 3's Bad Girls, in which Buffy and Faith kind of like fall into their depravity. / they don't, they're just being teenagers. Emma Caulfield doesn't appear in this episode, though she is credited. She was originally written in to appear in some of the group scenes, but she obviously got cut. Apparently at one point Andrew is telling everyone about Faith's background, which is wonderful. Really beautiful scene where he like pieces together all her backstory and all the images for a minute.
I have here apparently Andrew can make a clip show because it's just old footage of Buffy. Yeah,
so much fun. I really appreciated that kind of meta-narrativistic approach to it. And then at one point he has her fighting a Vulcan because he's misunderstood the phrase volcanologist. Apparently the Star Trek people were thrilled about this and are very happy for them to do whatever they wanted with with the whole concept. Yep. According to my notes. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Joel, do you have any Buffy bits for me?
Yeah, so I...
oh, sorry. Actually, no, one last Buffy bit. I'm really apologise for that. Apparently, in addition to the cold open, according to Drew Goddard, Joss Whedon wrote about 80% of the episode, though Margie Noxon did write the Faith and Spike scene, so it's hard to say why Drew Goddard got credited for this, if that's his opinion.
Yeah. Like industry stuff, realistically. So the opening scene where or the early scene where Xander is having the sex dream about the potentials, it feels very like he gets one fantasy sequence because Rebecca poke his eye out basically at the end of the episode. I know because he had a lava lamp in his room and it is dead. Yeah, like it's non-functional. I appreciate a couple of comments from Faith talking about how she doesn't like hospitals because she spent a lot of time there, and also her saying that Shannon was gutted like a catfish, and it's like, well, Faith would know about gutting. Yeah,
catfish. She's from the south, right?
Yes, I think she's from Louisiana. No, she's not. She's from Boston. Where's Boston?
Boston is like northeast.
Okay, so not the south then.
Is she from Boston? Do we know this?
Faith's from Boston, yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain that's the case.
I believe you. Lahan obviously being quite a southern name.
Like, all that makes sense. I 100% just have Faith is from Boston in my head.
Do you have faith that she's from Boston?
No. I was like, it's Buffy bit I have here is like, is Caleb kind of camp? because there's some moments where he's a little like, ooh, I love what if they want like a lovely dry Zinfandel at the Last Supper? There's an element.
No, he didn't say Zinfandel. He said a dry Zin.
A white, lovely dry Zin or whatever.
He also, Joel, he says at one point, "Oh, don't call me father. I'm more of a daddy."
No, he did not say that. He said never was nobody's daddy is what he says. But there is there's an element of I don't know, effeminess, a little bit of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
He also confirms in this episode that he blew up the council, which I do believe is a bit of a retcon, to be honest. I feel it's a retcon. Buffy's fired from her job in the high school in this episode, so all that narrative is kind of falling apart and falling away now. Faye says all the potentials are fashion disasters, so it's like, okay, look, it's not just us.
Yeah, no,
us noticing that.
It's so true. It's clear that they were just like, oh, listen, we need to dress them all up somewhat distinctly. Fuck.
And lastly, I thought it was appropriate that at the end of the episode, basically the entire ward in the hospital is like Buffy's associates. It's like the Buffy ward. Yeah. Like surely she must be getting some kind of a group discount by this point.
A group discount or a battery charge.
Oh God.
Okay, and let's now talk about other things. Fashion notes. So, the obvious thing here being that Caleb in his priest frock,
black is slimming. Everyone knows that.
True. Willow's wearing very high heels on the road back from LA, which I don't think we've ever seen Willow in heels specifically, but she runs really awkwardly in them, and it's like
we've definitely seen her run effectively before. So
100%. Faith just looks wonderful. She's wearing pretty standard Faith clothes, not quite as tight and leather as previously, but just
she seems comfortable.
Yeah, she does,
which I like.
She's wearing a black / like dark grey denim jacket. I'm like, maybe I want a dark grey denim jacket. Dawn at one point is wearing a very short skirt. In the background,
is it a short skirt or because she just have incredibly long legs?
It's definitely a short skirt style. Yeah. And Jesus Christ, she looks incredible. Like she looks like she's about 8 foot tall. It's just like, oh my God, when did you become like an adult? In this sequence. Sorry, that's not an appropriate thing to say because she's not an adult, but she looks so grown up and she looks wonderful. So well done her. I wish I could wear stuff that showed off my legs. My legs are really short.
Your long torso though.
I have a very long torso. I think that's all my fashion notes. And actually I have to go back to the Buffy Bits because Rachel Bilson is in this episode. She played God, I can't remember her name, but she was in the OC. She was the love interest of Seth, what's his name? Adam, your man who's in Gilmore Girls.
Brody?
Adam Brody. She's the love interest.
I knew that.
Yeah, he's been in loads of things. He was the love interest of Adam Brody, and she also went out with Adam Brody for years afterwards.
She's a potential in this.
She's a potential. She's one of the ones in Xander's Sex Dream. She never comes back. But yeah, Rachel Bilson was here. Okay, Joel, do you have any fashion notes?
No, I think the only thing I add to that is Spike just randomly topless in the basement as well. Like during the day when people can come down, just hang out, wig his top off, as you do.
Okay, and do you have a death count for us?
Yeah, so we have one vamp dusted by Faith. Actually, I don't know if you specifically noted that. I know we talked about it, but in that sequence where Faith returns to town, she sees Spike the vampire chasing some blonde girl, and the blonde girl turns out to be a vampire. Like that is again a specific description of that.
It's another callback to the Darla sequence of the opening of Welcome to the
Absolutely. But she vamps that
Darla,
dust.
Another redemption.
Dusts that vamp. Diane, whose potential's neck is broken by Caleb, and Molly from Ye Olde London is stabbed by Caleb in this episode as well.
Ooh, okay. Apparently we're on track to rate this season the highest of any season of Buffy, which is very worrying for me.
Look, it's
all like
it's been
nonsense.
a weird year.
It's all nonsense. Ignore our ratings. We're gonna do a definitive list.
We're gonna adjust it for inflation.
We're gonna do a definitive list of all the episodes and kind of base it on that. Okay, and so a rating.
Yeah, so potentially adding to that, I think I'm going to give this episode an 8.0 raggedy pontifical haircuts. Again, within the context of season 7, I think like this is like much less bloated than some season 7 episodes. I love Faith, makes me so happy when she's there. I think that Caleb is, as we said, a very solid addition, and I think that the
genuine threat.
I think the misogyny that he makes manifest is very relevant to the story, and I was curious how I would feel about the attack in the Vineyard, because I know it's a kind of seminal scene in season 7, and I actually think it still had impact, and it was like the escalation that we needed, because if we had gone one more episode talking about how dangerous the first is going to be without anything happening, it would have robbed narrative momentum, I think. So yeah, I'd say a solid, serviceable, admirable 8.
Great. I'm going to give it 8.1 gaping maws out of 10. Yeah, I would totally agree with you on all that. I probably would have rated it higher if I didn't realize that we were rating season 8 so highly already. But it's very good. It's well written. It is dense. It doesn't have a central thing, which I like a central thing. But the slaughter in the Vineyard is very interesting. I think taking some of the pressure off Buffy as a character in this episode, in terms of like having these other playful elements, Spike and Faith, and whatnot, it really helps. So I'm going 8. Does 8.2?
8.1.
8.1. I think I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, perfect. Okay, and let's move into the Cordelia Chase, because we are now an hour and 10 nearly.
It's the last episode of the year, Brian.
It is. Okay.
So the Cordelia Chase over on Buffy's companion show Angel, we are watching Shiny Happy People, which is a reference, of course, to Chinese communist propaganda, and also that song by Rem.
Orion.
I do know. I'm just winding everyone up. So basically, in this episode, Jasmine is made again manifest. She's birthing herself, played by Gina Torres, because if you're going to make a human form for yourself, might as well be Gina Torres. And she is fulfilling her destiny or prophecy, is kind of coming down as the big bad, and everyone she sees immediately falls under her thrall, loves her, deifies her, wants to adore her, wants to admire her. We first have this happen to really just Angel, because ostensibly Connor's all on board with doing this as well. I think we actually find out towards the end of the season that he was never, because he's her father, he was never under her spell. He just didn't know what else to do, which is so weak.
Can't wait for him to be retired.
Yeah. But and this is basically what she does. She goes to Angel Investigations. She convinces them through her power that she's wonderful, she's going to bring peace and joy and beauty to everything, and wants to spread this message. It's actually a reasonably effective episode. Definitely following on, I think, to be fair to the episode, we put all of our hate on the last episode for carrying the weight of that story. It's obviously still part of the story, but let's put it to a side a little bit.
Well, this episode has a narrative to it, which is that, from my memory, basically the first couple episodes are just everyone walking around adoring her for too long.
Yeah.
But thankfully, very quickly,
Fred,
comes out from under her thrall, specifically from getting some of her blood on her.
Yeah.
And that makes the episode immediately far more interesting.
Yes.
And has a structure, and it has her trying to figure out what to do and having an assassination attempt. All really good.
100%. I think that the Jasmine stuff by definition is a little bland, because she's meant to be bland. Like, what she's actually getting them to do is just saying she's wonderful, etc. But there is this menace of that, how do you fight something where as soon as anyone sees her, they fall under her power. And we get just enough of that for it to be, initially I think it's interesting when Connor and Angel come back by themselves, and Wesley and Gong are trying to be tell them that they're under a spell, and then as soon as they see her, they also fall under it as well. And how the different characters express it, I think Freg is strong from the start, even before she finds out about Jasmine, and then we kind of see her basically empowering them. It seems like potentially, and we know it's not, but potentially it's a good thing. She says that she basically explains that she is a power that be, and she's come down to earth because she can't stand all the evil. She wants to get involved with the fight and empower them to do so. And it's a convincing threat, I think. And then Fred accidentally gets some of her blood in her bloodstream, and that allows her to see that Jasmine is in fact a disgusting monster, but no one else can see this. So there's this really fraught thing where she's trying to pretend she's the only person who can see in this world, which is obviously spooky. And then she thinks she can trust her friends, and that Wesley is convinced by her, but he actually betrays her, and she ends up on the run from that. So I think all that actually works reasonably well.
And Wesley and Alexis no,
not at all.
No, Alexis Denisov does a great job here Just he's really good at playing different versions of himself, as you noted during the episode. And I think Fred does a great job here. I just like I like Amy Acker, and with this with all this, while it's good, I probably would have given it a 7 failed feminist gestures overall. Maybe I definitely have to give it a 6 or less, because the episode does fridge Cordelia. It actively fridges her. It does.
They from this point on, they carry her back and basically dump her on the couch in the hotel and act around her. And this is until,
she comes back for that one episode
in season 5. That's Cordelia. Even aside from the production stuff, story wise, is bonkers. Like, it just doesn't, like, if we've invested in Cordelia as having been turned, if we did care about that story, to then just absent her from the rest of the show, it just doesn't work. So yeah, you have to dock it down for that. But I would say overall, I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
And we've another version of Angel here, where he's Angel, but he's also afraid of losing his soul because he loves Ginatora so much. So there's bits and pieces there which work. And bizarrely, one of the motivations for the episode is that someone attacks Jasmine, a human, because he thinks he sees a monster, and he gets in quite a Twilight Zone reveal. It turns out he's actually been quite, he's in the mental ward at the end, and he's been horrifically transformed by her. Yeah. And Sam Witwer, who plays this man John something, who had a starring role in, I want to say, the first 2 seasons of Battlestar Galactica. He is the basis
Halo?
for. It's not Hilo. Hilo's the guy who's in Dollhouse.
That's the confusion.
Yeah, but it is something very similar to that.
Yeah.
He is the voice and model for the main character in the Star Wars Force Unleashed games. And
they're my favorite games of all time.
Also, almost every time that Darth Maul has been played after Phantom Menace, which, if you're only a casual Star Wars watcher, it's actually a surprising amount of times. Sam Witwer is playing him, so like, he's an actor. He's a real person who's in this. So yeah, I think for all those reasons, I'll settle with you on probably a 6 failed feminist gestures. As an episode, it's a 7. I won't burden it with the Jasmine storyline, the guilt of that, but I will burden it with fridging Cordelia.
100%.
So,
like, I mean, it literally, they're like, oh, and Cordelia is here, and she's collapsed. Let's put her somewhere. Yeah. And they just leave her.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
So,
fuck you, Joss Whedon.
Fuck you, Joss Whedon. We'll end the year on that.
Yeah.
So with that's the end of our episode and the end of Buffy Boys for 2021.
Yeah. So I'm thinking what will probably come back, like, and this is yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable. We're probably going to take 2 full weeks off, so there won't be an episode on the 29th, as you would expect, nor the 5th, and instead the first episode of New Year will be the 12th, which I think, probably a bit late coming back, but we're a bit late finishing this year. So I think that's fair enough. 2 full weeks off for us, I think, well deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a wonderful year for Buffy Boys, a wonderful year to share with everyone listening. This is, I think it's fair to say, when we start recording Buffy Boys, we didn't think 2 of the years that we were doing it for, if we did it for that, will be like this.
Yeah.
And as always, it's been
a weird year.
But it's been a heartening thing to do week on week and to make a little bit of connection through. So we hope you've enjoyed listening.
Yeah. We hope we all have a wonderful Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a wonderful time regardless, because I'm sure this time of year, either things get really slow for you, hopefully, because everyone else is off doing stuff, or maybe it's a little bit lonely, so maybe you want to go listen to your favorite podcast. Buffy Boys, that's us.
Yeah, I was going to say we won't be offended.
I hope you have a wonderful time and a great new year.
Yeah, absolutely. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Tell your friends and tell yourself you're doing your best. Have a great year.
Yeah, have a great Christmas. Okay, Buffy Boys.
See ya.
See ya.